When we lack motivation or stumble in life, the modern cultural reflex is to dig into the past. Books like Meg Errol's Tiny Traumas suggest that even without severe tragedy, our current struggles are the direct result of small events, childhood emotional neglect, or a single careless comment. Cognitive scientist Scott Barry Kaufman spent his career studying human potential. Building on the growth mindset research of Carol Dweck, he demonstrated that traits like intelligence are malleable, acting more like muscles we train than fixed labels. In his work, Rise Above, he applies this same scientific rigor to our obsession with trauma. Kaufman poses an uncomfortable question about this backward-looking analysis. Are we actually unearthing the true root causes of our pain? Or are we manufacturing a story, a customized excuse, that allows us to avoid the effort required to change? When every minor difficulty is categorized as a deep psychological injury, self-reflection stops being a tool for growth. It becomes a mechanism for paralysis. Research by memory scientist Julia Shaw shows that human recollection is not an objective recording. We constantly reconstruct our memories. Often, we aren't recalling a past event as it happened, but rewriting the story of that event to justify how we feel right now. Clinging tightly to clinical labels like depression, ADHD, or abandonment schemas biologically conditions the brain. By expecting pain and limitation, the brain creates a feedback loop of negative neural pathways, turning the diagnosis into a self-fulfilling prophecy. Psychological diagnoses are intended to be temporary maps to help us understand our origins and guide recovery. They were never meant to be permanent fortresses where we excuse a state of total helplessness. This visualization shows the psychological entitlement scale, which measures how much a person feels the world owes them. Kaufman modified this scale by adding a single crucial clause to every statement, demanding special treatment, specifically because I have suffered more than others. This mindset creates a state known as vulnerable narcissism. Individuals in this state believe their suffering is so uniquely profound that no one else can understand it, effectively isolating themselves above the experiences of others. This leads to the entitlement paradox. When society grants validation, attention, and leniency to someone because they are broken, taking the steps to heal becomes a direct threat to their newfound social privilege. Within this specific psychological trap, the mind can subconsciously sabotage its own recovery. It calculates that getting better means losing the attention and care granted to those who are suffering. When you mix constant anxiety, hostility, and entitlement, you produce a state called anger rumination. Instead of moving forward, the individual spends their energy replaying past injustices and fantasizing about retribution. This repressed anger eventually searches for an outlet Kaufman calls a dark ego vehicle. People may adopt political ideologies or moral causes to camouflage their personal resentments and hidden rage behind a shield of righteous justice. Social media accelerates this through performative vulnerability. Algorithms reward users who broadcast their deepest traumas and emotional pain to strangers, prioritizing attention over genuine help. Broadcasting pain online is rarely a step towards healing. Instead, it serves as a mechanism to claim moral superiority, foster collective resentment, and exert emotional control over others. Wanting to stand out is a healthy psychological drive. This need for uniqueness builds leadership and independence, provided it is rooted in creative action rather than a competition over who has suffered the most. When confronting genuine trauma, our culture usually pushes us towards two destructive extremes. We either overprotect the individual through endless coddling, or we deploy a cold dismissal, telling people to simply grit their teeth. Scientist George Bonanno offers a more accurate framework of human resilience. He shifts the language from absolute traumas to potentially traumatic events. This phrasing acknowledges the pain while highlighting our inherent biological capacity to recover from it. When Rabbi Harold Kushner lost his 14-year-old son to a rare genetic disease, he reached a devastating realization. He acknowledged that while his grief made him more compassionate, he would trade that growth in a second to have his son back. Severe tragedy contains no magical meaning in itself, and attempting to romanticize that pain is a disrespect to the loss. Clinical psychiatrist Irvin Yalom reinforces this reality with a sharp clinical maxim. To move forward, you must completely give up the hope of ever having had a better past. True resilience requires accepting that a tragic history is permanent. It cannot be bargained with or undone. Only by acknowledging the reality of the past can we clear the way for action in the present. This marks a sharp distinction, separating blame for past trauma, not your fault, from responsibility for recovery. To break the cycle of rumination, instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" you shift toward the future by asking, "What can I do right now?" This is the core of psychological flexibility. It aligns with a paradox observed by Carl Rogers. We can only begin to change our behavior once we fully accept our current flawed reality. Accepting yourself as simply enough is the first practical step to escaping emotional paralysis and moving toward the future. Philosopher Ichiro Kishimi points out that those in the victimhood trap often suffer from a crippling fear of other people's opinions. Achieving freedom requires breaking the addiction to external validation and measured pity. This requires shifting the foundation of your self-esteem. Instead of deriving value from status or a curated persona, you have to build deep, authentic human relationships. Physicist Paul Dirac and psychologist Isaac Prylatansky explored a state called anti-mattering, the acute feeling of total social invisibility. When left unaddressed, the despair of feeling like you do not matter to anyone can rot into bitter extremism. A practical response to anti-mattering is proactive contribution. You build a resilient sense of worth by offering small, positive, daily contributions to the people immediately around you, rather than waiting for the world to cater to your pain. The past is a source of data and inspiration, not a repeating loop. Life is unpredictable and often unfair, but by abandoning the dark ego, you reclaim the agency to shape what happens next.
Philosophers said that in the future, people will be educated and very lucky. Learn instead of us and make your world better. Click and subscribe to see more and become more aware.